I believe, as a former prosecutor, having seen some of this firsthand, and the fear and the danger is that we must stand up and speak out against hate crimes and anti-Semitism whenever they occur. To me, this means the basic idea of making sure that we prioritize with law enforcement enforcement of our laws, hate crimes. It also means ensuring funding for the nonprofit grant program, which I was involved in early on when we started to expand it, and funding security upgrades at our synagogues, at our nonprofit organizations, and places of worship. It's critical that students feel safe in their schools, and it is also critical we allow peaceful protests. This is important in my state. Minnesota has a very strong and sizable Jewish population. We also have a sizable and strong Muslim population. And I always remember, as I look at how sometimes things do work, I look at one point when one of our Jewish community centers nearby where I grew up got a hateful threat call, and the kids ran out in their swimming suits in the middle of the winter. The seniors who were there for classes out without no coats, and they were, as they said, wandering in the wilderness in the middle of the snow. And when they got back in, when the threat was assessed and they were allowed back in the center, they checked their answers on their phone calls, and the first one that they had gotten was from our Islamic Center, offering them a place to meet and a place to go. So that's what guides me as I think about what we want to see more of in this country. So I'm going to focus on you, Mr. Rachlin, although I do appreciate all the witnesses. Minnesota, just last year, as many as 25 Jewish schools and religious facilities received bomb threats. We also had threats on mosques, and we actually had a pretty severe bombing at a mosque that was investigated by the FBI years ago, and people were prosecuted that were white supremacists. In your testimony, you said that the fear of anti-Semitism has become commonplace for too many American Jews. Could you talk about how we could better direct ways for the public to help out on this? Our U.S. attorney from the last administration, Andy Luger, who's Jewish and really created a good working relationship with our Muslim community, prioritized working to build community relations, including meeting with those at Temple Israel in Minneapolis after their synagogue was defaced, making sure the community was informed. Could you talk a little bit about that?
So first, thank you so much for the question, and I also want to thank you for mentioning the nonprofit security grant program. I know I speak for everyone up here and for the vast majority of the Jewish community that it is one of the most vital programs that Congress has passed, and it allows us to feel safe in our communities. That being said, to your point of what else can be done, hardening targets can only get us so far. Providing armed security guards and bulletproof glass and different kinds of methods to keep us safe within buildings only gets us halfway there. I think the example you brought up about the Islamic Center texting out about the different people and trying to get them to come in while they were out in the cold when there was a bomb threat, I think that speaks volumes. I've worked in the peace building space in Israel and Palestine, and one of the biggest things I've noticed is the ability to bring people together, and I think that's absolutely critical. And so when we're looking at ways to combat anti-Semitism and to end it writ large, you have to look at things beyond hardening targets. I would strongly recommend people to invest in coalition building processes, bringing communities from across the spectrum together to actually have constructive conversations, to create a shared language of what is and what isn't anti-Semitism, and even beyond that, what is hate and what's not.
So social media, this committee is determined to do more on that, especially I think this Congress. Senator Grassley's long been involved in this, and of course protecting speech. But when we look at things like pornography, fentanyl sold online, impact social media is having on spreading hate. Could you talk a little bit about that? Is there enough being done online? Because I'm afraid this is instigating some of this.
I would say absolutely not. I think more needs to be done online. I think one of the major drivers of anti-Semitism online is the X platform, the platform formerly known as Twitter, with the removal of safeguards and with Mr. Musk ascending to run that company, we've seen a massive increase in anti-Semitism being propagated on that platform and spreading out from there. And that's just one platform. That's not even talking about Meta or the other social media platforms. So I think there needs to be more done to actually bring them to heel, to understand what is anti-Semitism, and to actually stop, in many cases, those CEOs that run those organizations from pushing those theories out farther.
Okay. Last question. I pressed FBI Director Patel to prioritize thoroughly investigating hate crimes against all communities, including the Jewish community, and he agreed. What steps do you think the FBI, since we are the federal body here in the Senate, can take to making combating hate crimes a priority?
So one, I would think that I would hope that the FBI and the new administration would actually refer back to the 2023 strategy that was supported by Jews across the spectrum, and actually look at this not just from an FBI perspective, but from a whole of society perspective. How do we do this as a society to actually eradicate anti-Semitism? And I think